trying to find out your like that's not my style at all. Like I'm very like organized, trying to do things early. And he's a great last minute, but like he brings in the most money.
The Roy Wilkins Center for Human Relations and Social Justice at the Hubert H. Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Thank you for participating in the 4th World Conference on Remedies to Racial and Ethnic Economic Inequality, and a special welcome to all of the participants from the Oslo Center who are meeting with us in joint sessions today. We are fortunate to have gathered top policymakers, researchers, analysts, and others to learn more about their views and the results of their pioneering research on narrowing racial and ethnic economic gaps. The conference will begin today not as a singular occurrence, but as a part of a continuum. The first World Conference on Remedies to Racial and Ethnic Economic Inequality was held in 1996 here in Minneapolis at the Humphrey School, and it responded to the problem of retrenchment in affirmative action policies. In 1998, a second gathering took place in Auckland, New Zealand, and in Adelaide, South Australia, to address the concept of reconciliation. Examples from Indigenous people in New Zealand and Australia illustrated the power of history, language, and culture. The third meeting of the World Conference on Remedies to Racial and Ethnic Economic Equality was convened in Durban, South Africa in 2001 in conjunction with the United Nations World Conference Against Racism, and the concept of reparations was explored. The 5th World Conference on Remedies to Racial and Ethnic Economic Equality will be held in 2017. So this is the 4th World Conference on Remedies to Racial and Ethnic Economic Equality. Each of us has a responsibility as we convene over the next 3 days to examine the remedies presented, to assess their viability, and to determine if the remedies can truly lessen racial and ethnic economic inequality. When we find solutions to racial and ethnic economic inequality, the inherent capacity of those bearing the burdens of that inequality will be revealed. They will no longer be viewed as a problem to be solved. They will be seen as a resource of great potential. It is up to us to demonstrate how that can be done. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Minnesota State Senator Patricia Torres-Ray. Patricia Torres-Ray was elected to the Minnesota Senate in 2006 and is now serving her 2nd term. In the Senate, she serves on the Education Committee, the Jobs Growth Committee, the State Government Innovation, and the Veterans Committee. Prior to becoming a state senator, she acquired 18 years of experience in building partnerships between agencies, nonprofit organizations, tribal reservations, and other organizations that serve children and families. Senator Ray served as a program administrator for the Minnesota Department of Human Services from 1998 to 2006, and as the ombudsperson for families at the Minnesota Office of Families from 1992 to 1998. And I should also point out that she was a very proud member of the Roy Wilkins Center staff as a research associate and was instrumental in bringing to the University of Minnesota a $1.5 million research grant from the National Institute of Health to examine racial disparities in child neglect. Senator Ray has 2 degrees from the University of Minnesota, a bachelor's degree in urban study and a master's degree in public affairs from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, where she is now a faculty member. Professor and Senator Patricia Torres-Ray.
This is truly a privilege for me, Dr. Myers, my friend Sam. I just can't believe that I am here before all of these very smart professors, very intelligent students, opening this very, very important conference. 25 years ago, I was trying to figure out how to speak English, how to find the means to come to this wonderful institution. But then I found amazing mentors. But I can say without a doubt and without hesitation that Dr. Myers has been the most important and influential mentor in my personal and professional career. Thank you, Dr. Myers. Thank you for inspiring me to educate myself, to work harder, to understand what disparities are all about. More importantly, not to give up, because it is just so easy to think that we should give up, that we are okay, that I am okay now. I was a program administrator in DHS. I have a beautiful family. I am okay. I think I am okay. I became a senator 6 years ago. I'm running for re-election right now for my third term. But I do not believe that I am okay, because the people around me are not doing well. 47% of Latino kids that look like me, are not even graduating from high school. 48% of African American children are not graduating from high school today. Less than half of those children go to college, and less than 10% of that half are actually getting a higher degree. So Dr. Myers, you are among the very few. I am among the very few. And so important that we are having this conference here in the state of Minnesota, where so many are doing so well. So it's easy to forget. So if 97% of white children are graduating, it's easy to forget that so many African American children, Native American children, are just not graduating. By the way, only 37% of Native American children are graduating from high school, and a very small percentage are going to college. This is happening at the time that Americans have the highest income inequality among rich nations in the world. This is what we are going to be talking about during the next 3 days. Over the past 20, 30 years, Americans have also experienced the greatest increase in income equality. I think you have heard this day after day in the news as we prepare to elect the new president of the United States. So then we talk about this income inequality. So many people struggling right now to find a job, but you hear very little about who these people are. What is that they are struggling with? Well, we are here to tell you that the overwhelming majority of the people who are struggling today are Black men, Black women, Native women, immigrant people. That is who they are. So African Americans in this country are less likely to be hired than European Americans, even when they have the same qualifications. Think about the impact for the African American child when we have the highest income inequality. An individual with a skill certified through an academic degree translates into occupational qualification, which turns into greater economic rewards. We all know that. I am right now in this room amongst the educated ones. So we know we need a degree. We know that your degree, your credential, leads to greater economic rewards. Well, if only 47% of our children are graduating from high school, when do you think that we are going to get there? So, income inequality is directly tied to education. In Minnesota, we need to do more. In our country, we need to do more. We're going to be learning more about what is going on with these numbers, and here in an academic setting, trying to understand really what this is about. Is it about race? Is it about income? Is it about both? Are we in a time in history in the United States where we really need or can say that it's not about race any longer? Some of us are saying, do I need an answer for that question? Do I need an answer? I do not. What I need an answer for is from all of you. I need an answer from our government. I need an answer from our policymakers, because I am not going to longer accept that only 40% of the kids that look like me graduate from high school. I am not going to accept the disparities that exist in this state any longer. That was one of the reasons I came to the Humphrey Institute. That is the reason I wanted to find somebody like Dr. Myers. I was looking 25 years ago for that answer. Is this about race? Is this about class? Is this about income? I no longer care to find the exact academic answer to that question. I want to resolve that problem. I am so lucky that I found the mentors who can help me dive into the academic discussion, because I think that it is essential to policy. But what we need to recognize today is that we have a crisis. What we need to recognize today is that we cannot accept that number, and that we have right now the youngest community, the fastest growing community in Minnesota, includes people that look like me, people that look like Dr. Myers. So we need to do something about it. Our future depends on it. I am here also to introduce two remarkable people, but before I do that, I would like to offer a resolution that I was so happy that we were able to secure for the Roy Wilkins Center. I was so proud to be able to do this. And I am even prouder to be able to give this to my mentor, Dr. Myers. Thank you for your amazing work. Thank you for being a mentor to so many of us. I wanted to put all the students together here in front of this podium so that the University of Minnesota can see the type of diversity and the students that have come through the Roy Wilkins Center from all over the world, all types of backgrounds, all types of ethnicities and races. We have come to you to learn about the importance of undoing disparities. Thank you so much for your work. And this is on behalf of the State Senate, congratulating you for your work and encouraging you to continue to do the work that you're doing for all of us.
Thank you very much.
And I was given a wonderful task of introducing two amazing men that I have been working with, and particularly Commissioner Lindsay. I am so excited that he is here, and he has been an inspiration to me. You probably will read the bio and know that he is a remarkable attorney who has 25 years of experience in litigation. And there is no coincidence, of course, that the Dayton administration found that and thought that, of course, we needed somebody like Commissioner Lindsay in the administration to help us solve tremendous problems. But rather than telling you about what you are able to see in paper about his work and about all of the different positions that he has held in the past, what I would like to let you know is that Commissioner Lindsay is doing remarkable work with this administration, and that he has been able to secure the support of many senators and representatives and other commissioners, and that of course includes me, to really make a difference in the state. And more than anything else, to be able to really monitor what is happening right now in terms of access to jobs, expanding education opportunities for minorities in the state of Minnesota. He has a very important position today. But what we need to do is to make sure that we work with Commissioner Lindsay very closely and to let the governor know that the office needs to be funded, that more resources need to be put in place if we really want to address disparities. Commissioner Lindsay is doing a remarkable job of creating coalitions with different communities, with multiple organizations, to make sure that the state will open opportunities to minorities. Thank you, Commissioner Lindsay. We are incredibly proud of the work you are doing and have a lot of hope. I think that the next 2 years are going to be very important for the state of Minnesota in terms of the work that you're doing and the opportunities you are opening for minorities. And Dr. Prévenot, that is also the president of Oxford College and happens to be my constituent. So I am very happy to be able to introduce him and to talk about, I know his wife and I know his 2 children because they live in my district. So I know of the work that he's doing at Oxford College, and as our neighbors, you know that we have been working on partnerships with the university and are really proud to work on issues around diversity. And his work, for me, represents truly a building of family unity and commitment to community. He's working on issues related to philanthropy. He is also created an environment in Oxford College in which many students from diverse backgrounds find serious opportunities to advance their education and to be involved in community programs. And I happen to be working very closely with Emiliano Chahil, who's been working with the university for as long as Dr. Prévenot has been there. And I know of the work that he is doing to really welcome diversity and to create more opportunities so that the university can be more connected with the neighborhood that they are situated in, which is the Riverside area, where we know we have tremendous diversity. So welcome to you both. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to be here with all of you today. I hope you have a remarkable experience, and I hope that you get inspired to work on these issues and addressing disparities as I have for the last 25 years. Thank you.
Well, first off, I want to thank Senator Torres-Ray for such a warm introduction and remarks about sort of the work in which is going on at the Department of Human Rights. I too had the same feeling when I looked at the distinguished list of individuals who were coming here to speak on the important issues that are being addressed here. And I had to step back and just say, am I the right person to be doing the introduction? Because it is such a distinguished panel of speakers, and the subject matter areas which are being covered are so extensive that this truly is a premier conference on what I consider to sort of be the most important civil rights issue in the entire world today. And that really is this economic opportunity. Many of you know that there was a book which was recently published by a man by the name of Jim Clifton, who is the CEO of Gallup. And then the book, he talks about a longitudinal study which was done by Gallup over the last 30 years, in which they asked this question: what is the most important thing for you as an individual? And they didn't just ask it in the United States, they asked it around the entire world. And the response that came back to Gallup was this: the most important thing for people around the world is a good job. And hence the title of the book, The Coming Jobs War. What people really want is a chance to really have a good job, a good chance for economic opportunity. How are we as government officials around the world providing those opportunities for people to realize something which is so critically important to them, which they say is more important than even democracy or religion? Having a good job. Dr. Algernon Austin from the Economic Policy Institute was here in the Twin Cities last year. And there are some here in the Twin Cities that know this of that report, and that is that the greatest disparity between white and African American employment for major metropolitan cities, the greatest disparity is the Twin Cities. Greater than Chicago, greater than Los Angeles, greater than Dallas, greater than southern cities. The greatest disparity between whites and African Americans is here in the Twin Cities. And in that report, he talks about the challenges as relates to educational disparities, which Senator Torres-Ray so vividly highlighted and illustrated. And he says even when you control for those educational disparities, you still have a disparity which cannot be explained except for the effects of discrimination. And I say that because I think it's important for us to acknowledge that there's two facets to this problem. There's an educational skills gap issue, and there is a discrimination issue. And in my work as a commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, what I often find when I speak to audiences is that they only hear one of those respective clauses of that sentence. Either they hear it's an education skills gap, or they hear that it's a discrimination issue. But rarely do they hear both. This conference, I believe, is going to highlight, illustrate that it is just more than just one of those. And your work is so vitally important and vitally critical. Last night I was in Duluth, and I was talking about the construction goals that our department had set. And for those of you who are not familiar with the way in which the Minnesota law reads on construction goals, the Commissioner of Human Rights sets the goals for construction. And recently in Hennepin and Ramsey County, I adjusted the goals from 11% to 32%. And that's the number of workforce hours. Now, part of that is just a realization of the changing demographics in Hennepin and Ramsey County. For most people of color in Hennepin and Ramsey County, they were not surprised when I adjusted the goals from 11 to 32%. But for a lot of individuals, that was a shock, a surprise to them. Then I had to remind them that 10 out of 11 Minnesotans that are over the age of 55 identify themselves as Caucasian, not of Hispanic origin. And then more than 40% of the children who are in K through 12 education in Hennepin and Ramsey County identify themselves as an ethnic minority. So is it really a shock or a change that it's going to shift from 11 to 32%? That change, that dynamic that is coming, that demographic shift is coming? The Department of Human Rights in the past has sort of been viewed as sort of pointing out problems, not being part of a solution process. So last night when I was up in Duluth, I talked about sort of the goals which were being set, but it was not really a dialogue as relates to sort of pointing out the respective problems as relates to contractors. It was really there to facilitate a dialogue between the community, contractors, government, to figure out how are we going to provide, going back to what I had said earlier, what is most important for people, how to get a good job. And that can't be done in a silo. It has to be done reaching across. In speaking with those folks last night in Duluth, They really didn't care whether it came from government. They didn't really care whether it came from the private sector. They just wanted the answer. They wanted that blueprint. And of course, I could identify some of the things in which we as state government here are trying to do, talking about reaching across within education, with Commissioner Casilius, Chancellor Rosenstone from MnSCU, Commissioner Phillips with Indeed, trying to partake sort of what gaps exist in trying to align educational programming in a way which may be different, innovative, to meet that changing world. I talked about sort of the things which we are doing with the Department of Human Services and the Department of Health to line up and reduce disparities which exist in healthcare. Because if you don't have good health, right, it's hard to be able to go to that good job, right? Last night, though, I could not provide all the answers. But I said, I know that there's this really smart professor, and he's having this great conference. And I'm going to take a lot of notes. And hopefully I will come up with a good blueprint. So I am very humbled to be here, but I am really here to be the good student, to find the answers that you have, the problems that you've identified, the solutions and answers that you are advancing, so I can continue to facilitate that dialogue. And I look forward to hearing and participating in that dialogue with you. So it's important work that you're doing. Thank you very much for being here within the Twin Cities, and I look forward to this conference being a tremendous success, which I truly know that it will be. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Paul Pribenow, and I'm the president of Augsburg College, and I wanted to bring official welcome to all of you here. We are so proud of the partnership that has evolved over the past several years between Augsburg, which, as many of you know, is directly across the street, and especially the Humphrey School, as we're working on many fronts to think about the intersecting values and commitments that we have as educational institutions. Most of you are aware that we actually have two different conferences going on here. We have the Wilkins Center conference, which we are happy to launch this morning with Prime Minister Bondevik. We also have a conference that will be happening here and at Augsburg over the next couple of days around dignity and empowerment, the role of women in global food security. So we have these, again, a sign of the richness of our conversations around these critical issues. I might lift up two just anecdotes that for me stand for the important commitments that we make, certainly around the Wilkins Center's really remarkable work around the world in thinking about economic equality. Of course, the truth is we live here in a global place right here in Cedar Riverside. Yesterday, several of us were just across the street at the Riverside Plaza, these iconic buildings that are located here at the end of our street. These buildings have gone through a $150 million renovation over the past couple of years for the residents of that building. As most of you know, the population of those plaza facilities at this point are primarily Somali Americans, refugees, immigrants who have come to this country. The largest population of Somalis outside of Mogadishu. And as I listened yesterday to the celebration of the renovation that's happened there, yes, new plumbing and new electricity and all of the things that help to increase the quality of life, what I truly heard was the ways in which the residents of this facility have engaged with the city and the county and the state and the federal government to think about being partners in the work of creating a community, creating a quality of life, creating economic opportunities for the residents there that truly is a microcosm of the kinds of challenges that we all face. And so we don't have to go far to find the centrality of these questions in our life here in Cedar Riverside as we face around the world. The other anecdote that I would lift up for you happens to be in some ways linked to our distinguished speaker this morning, Prime Minister Bondevik, who's been a wonderful friend of Augsburg. I think you will note that he received an honorary degree from the college just a year ago. We've had a 6-year partnership and work on some central issues, both here in the United States as well as around the world. But Augsburg, of course, as many of you know, was founded by Norwegian Americans 143 years ago. And yet we have become perhaps the most diverse private college in the upper Midwest over the past several years. And many of our students, in fact, are African immigrants and refugees who have come to Augsburg. It's their college. They grew up in this community. And one of my favorite moments in the year is just before the Christian Advent season, which happens, we celebrate something called Velkommen Jul. And we have these wonderful women who dress up in the traditional Norwegian dress and prepare things like krumkake and rice pudding and waffles, and it's a lovely event, always popular with the community. But one of the images that will never leave my mind is watching our Somali students come up the steps in their traditional dress and come into contact with these Norwegian folks with their traditional goods and crafts. And it seems to me that's a microcosm of, for us, where we are in thinking about our relationship to Norway. At Augsburg and here at the Humphrey School, as you know, we now co-host the Nobel Peace Prize Forum. The Peace Prize will be awarded tomorrow in Norway, and we will celebrate the 25th anniversary of that coming here in March 2013, where our guests will be Mrs. Karman from Yemen and Mr. Yunus from Bangladesh. So a wonderful celebration. But the truth is, our connections to Norway could be seen as nostalgic only. We could only celebrate those traditional crafts. And one of the things that we've lifted up in our work over the past several years is, in fact, the relevance of Norway to our work. And it seems to me especially appropriate that Prime Minister Bondevik is here this morning, because he is in many ways an emblem of the work that Norway is doing in the world to create peace, to create justice, to create and respond to human rights. And in that way, there could be no more relevant message for our students as we send them out into the world. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you all this morning and to have a chance to be here as we hear from Prime Minister Bondevik. Thank you.
It is now my distinct honor to introduce the former Prime Minister of Norway and the founder and president of the Oslo Center for Peace and Human Rights, Kjell Magne Bondevik. Established in 2006, the Oslo Center for Peace and Human Rights promotes democracy, human rights, and interfaith and intercultural dialogue. The Oslo Center also redefined the way we think about emerging democracies, where human rights and dialogue are necessary pillars for building sustainable societies. The Oslo Center also works closely with Kenya, Somalia, and Sudan in order to establish strong democratic institutions. Mr. Bondevik has played a vital role in the political life of Norway since 1969, when he became the deputy member of Norway's parliament. After holding several cabinet posts, he served as the Prime Minister of Norway from 1997 to 2000, and again as the Prime Minister of Norway from 2001 to 2005. Immediately following his second term as Prime Minister, Mr. Kjell Magne Bondevik was appointed the United Nations Secretary General's Special Humanitarian Envoy for the Horn of Africa. He served there from 2006 and 2007 in response to the recurrent drought and food insecurity devastating that part of the world. You will see throughout the day that Mr. Bondevik is on the schedule 3 times. He will give this morning's keynote address. He will lead the first panel, and he will speak again at this afternoon's luncheon. We are extremely honored to have so much of the former Prime Minister's time today. Please welcome Kjell Magne Bondevik.
Thank you so much, and thank you for giving me and the Oslo Center this opportunity to speak about building social and political stability through collective partnership and gender engagement. And after my speech, we will follow up with the panel discussions. with other Norwegians as well participating. The Oslo Center shall contribute to responsible leadership in fragile states and weak democracies. Responsible leadership is leadership by example. Exercising a commitment to dialogue and political cooperation and promotion of human rights and democratic principles. Fragile states and weak democracies are to be understood as states that are vulnerable to internal conflicts, that are characterized by political, ethnic, and religious divides, and weak state policies and institutions, and or states where democratic praxis has yet to gain a strong foothold. In this regard, the Oslo Center will contribute by, first, providing context-sensitive advice to political leaders, parties, and the government apparatus on power sharing, coalition building, and enhancement of a culture of dialogue and cooperation based on democratic principles. And second, providing documentation, awareness raising, and competence enhancement on international human rights standards, obligations, and instrument to political leaders, the government apparatus, and the judiciary. And third, providing meeting places and facilitating dialogues. It is a special challenge to involve more women in the political processes. We admire female political strong leaders such as Aung San Suu Kyi from Burma. But the truth is that in most developing countries and fragile states, women are not allowed to play the role they should do. Let me share with you my own experiences from Norway. My political activism started in the beginning of the 70s, when the question of women's rights was high on the political agenda home in Norway. The movement was growing, and feminism became a term of importance, both internally in my own Christian Democratic Party and in public life in general. I met women concerned about gender roles and women's right to participate in public life. These women made me realize the importance of women's participation in public life. I was quite young at the time, which may have opened my eyes to new perspectives and new realities. Today, equality of gender participation in government is a matter of course in Norway. And the idea of inequality seems foreign and strange. However, this is a result of changes in norms and values and achieved through legislation and hard work over many years. In my second government period, we proposed changes in gender legislation in Norway. The state secretary in my office worked with and for equality issues, and among other things ensured at least a 40-60 distribution of men and women in all public committees and boards. An important part of my government's policy of development cooperation included aid, especially directed towards women. Women are still much more likely than men to be poor. But aid directed towards women represents an effort to make up for some of the structural differences the sexes in some countries, and make women able to rise up and improve their position in the society. It is not, however, until women possess important leadership positions in society that the real difference can begin to be permanently reduced. In that regard, I believe that gender quotas are necessary to promote women participation in public life, at least in periods of transition. We have extensive equal rights laws accumulated over several years in gender equality legislation. Norway was the first country in the world with an equal rights director, an ombud, as an institutionalized watchdog for equal rights. A law was passed in 2005 that orders that all business boards with more than 4 members need to have at least a 40-60 representation of men and women. There are numerous supportive arrangements to help women combine family and work. One of the best known arrangements is a financial support, including a quite extensive paid leave after childbirth. And this extends to men as well. The family can decide who can best care for the children at home. In addition, education, training, and competence building for women are important factors in this regard. If you neglect women's importance, you throw away half of the world's human leadership resources. This realization may be the key to increased awareness among male leaders about women's participation. Male leaders need to address these issues because this is also their fight. Male leaders themselves will benefit from women participation. So men, it's time to stand up for the women. Some words about fragile states. Fragile states, that is states with high levels of internal conflict, or states in a post-conflict situation with weak state policies and institutions. They will often have unstable coalition governments where power is shared between political parties, ethnic clans, and other actors in a power-sharing arrangement. Such coalition governments may well be the result of political compromises and deals to end violent conflict and often lack a common political platform. Generally speaking, fragile states and weak democracies often have a short history of political cooperation and democratic governance. In such states, strong group interests often constitute platform for political mobilization. Non-partisan civil society organizations are weak, and the competence and resources to develop political solutions that gain broad support are limited. The ability to foster political solutions to the benefit of the people, to deliver services, and to provide sufficient voice and accountability is a necessity, both for the government's legitimacy and for general confidence in democracy as a political system. In many volatile political situations, cooperation between the parties to a power-sharing arrangement is also the sole guarantee against recurring and violent conflicts. Such cooperation may also be a precondition for a successful post-conflict reconciliation. Efforts at enhancing political cooperation in divided and conflict-ridden societies are, therefore, a means to conflict prevention and to reconciliation. As an independent organization, the Oslo Center can play a role that is sometimes difficult for states to fill. However, we are a small organization and will not go about our task alone. We work, therefore, in partnership and seek to complement the efforts of governments, other non-governmental organizations, the United Nations, and research institutions. We rely, as a small organization, on strong partners with regard to our democracy projects, and we work especially in partnership with organizations like National Democratic Institute, NDI, International IDEA, and Club de Madrid. Club de Madrid is an organization of more than 80 former presidents and prime ministers working for democracy, and I'm a member myself. The work towards democracies involves many different actors, but the main initiator for change is the local stakeholders, who both carry the responsibility of initiation as well as remaining engaged in the process working towards change. Our role, together with the international community, is to support such a development. For greater change, single initiative can do little, but with a joint effort, a coordinated effort built on collaboration, also the Oslo Center believes that accomplishments can be made. As we are moving forward in the work in countries such as Kenya, South Sudan, and as mentioned already, Somalia, we can identify a need to both facilitate coordination as well as to create mechanisms supporting collaboration. As a small organization working from the privileged north, we recognize the need to anchor the work in the form of partnership. The Oslo Center has, through its work, experienced positive changes towards democracy and recognizes that women are playing a central role when reforming a society. They are many times the initiator of change, but are deprived space at the negotiating table. I have participated in projects in several countries at the Horn of Africa for empowering women to take part in public life and get leading positions. By coming together, having workshops, discussing common challenges, they are now in a better position to take leading roles. I have participated in such projects in countries like Uganda, Kenya, and Somalia. The exclusion of women in reconciliation and peace processes is not only unjust, as women are 50% of the population, but also a loss for the country itself. The country's political and economic discussions are deprived of the perspectives of both genders that might be crucial to create opportunities for change. If women, who often are the main caretakers, are not involved in change, the opportunity for including the next generation to think in democratic terms is a lost opportunity. When countries move towards democracy, it is important to stress inclusion in the talks and in action. Women and men, young and old, geographical, ethnic and religious groups, all equally included, not only represented, but having their voices heard at the table in the process. And this is a process that the Oslo Center supports. We do it both in terms of encouragement to governments and partners to adopt a gender equal approach, but also we do it through our own programmatic work. We seek representation of women to develop a gender perspective, taking into consideration women's particular interests and concerns. In Somalia, for instance, the Oslo Center has worked actively to support organic growth of the political associations and parties. The Oslo Center has offered advice and meeting places to discuss internal party democracy and party system. They are on the way now to establish political parties in Somalia, and they have the ambition to have the next general election based on political parties, not on ethnic clans. In that regard, the Oslo Center has made efforts to include women in the discussion by encouraging party leaders to appoint women as participants while paying attention to the specific concerns that women have raised, not only as women, but as citizens of equal importance and contributors to the development of the country. Let me, in this regard, point out some important measures that should be secured in legislations and policies in order to promote gender equality. All persons, men and women, are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to the equal protection of the law. In this respect, the law must prohibit any discrimination and guarantee to all persons equal and effective protection against discrimination of any ground, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, different political opinions, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. And second, everybody shall have an equal right to elect the members of the general representative bodies and to stand for election as a member of those bodies. And three, all citizens, men and women, shall have the right to participate in public affairs and to enjoy political rights, including the right to vote, to be elected, and to run for office. And fourth, the state shall take all appropriate measures to eliminate discrimination against women in order to ensure to them equal rights with men in the field of education. And five, fair wages and equal remuneration for work without distinctions of any kind, in particular, women being guaranteed conditions of work not inferior to those enjoyed by men, with equal pay for equal work. And 6, the state shall take all appropriate measures to eliminate discrimination against women in the field of health care in order to ensure, on the basis of equality between men and women, access to health care services, including those related to family planning. And 7, everyone, men and women, have the right to social security. And 8, forced labor, slavery, slave trade, trafficking in women and children, and sex trade shall be prohibited. Legislation only gets you so far. It has to be followed up with actual praxis. Male leaders are in the positions to make these changes. Women should be included in the typical male networks. Male leaders need to take responsibility for promoting women's participation in these frameworks. Male leaders need, when leadership positions are handed out through friends, colleagues, and networks of men, women will not be informed about those positions. Male leaders have a responsibility to include women in their boards and important leading positions. Male leaders can contribute to increase women's participation in public life, if there is a will to do it. There are more women than men who feel excluded and who experience harassment at work. Why is it so? What can be done to change this? You must have strong legislation in this matter. And leaders must address conflicts and incidents of harassment. The culture you find in private enterprise might hinder women's opportunities. And such culture must be transformed. And with an understanding of the challenges, we can make it change. Providing the society with security and fundamental human rights is a prerequisite for the legitimacy and democratic development of any state. Here, the relationship between the majority population and minority groups is the acid test for a community's will and ability to ensure human rights for everyone. Participation in public life is a human right. Non-participation of women is consequently not democracy. Women make up half of the population, and it's essential that this is reflected also in the country's leadership. Women may address important issues men would not have thought of. There is a need to realize that it is in the male leader's best interest to include the women. One needs to include women in decision-making also because, as many already know, they may offer a different and probably astonishing perspective on issues in question. Democracy is complicated, time-consuming, and does not only involve avenues of change, but with joint efforts supporting the people who are pro-change, we believe the progress towards democracy is possible. With collaborative, equal, and courageous efforts, enhancement of democracy can be made, and change can be achieved. And there is progress going on. Over the last about 25 years, the number of more or less democratic political systems and nations have been doubled. but still also in countries that we consider to be democracies. Women do not have equal opportunities to participate. And it's not a full democracy before there are equal rights and opportunities for men and women to take also leading positions in a political system. Change does not happen by itself. Awareness of inequality and for what needs to be done, however, will at least bring us halfway there. It's long overdue. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Orland Kringstad. I'm the Executive Director of the Oslo Center for Peace and Human Rights, and I'm here to thank Dr. Samuel Myers for including us in this event. We actually merged our two events. Ours is Dignity and Empowerment, Women as Key to Global Food Security, and the Fourth World Conference just about 6 weeks ago. And I want to commend your staff for helping us over the last 6 weeks overcome some formidable challenges. And they've done a really, really wonderful job, and we're so appreciative. I also want to thank the University of Minnesota and the Humphrey School and all of our speakers for participating, for allowing us to be a part of this and for participating. And I want to thank the Arthur B. Schultz Foundation for their support, along with the Norwegian Lutheran Memorial Church and their Leif Erikson International Festival, which is celebrating their 25th year this year. We're collaborating with them. And we also have a sort of a sister organization here in Minneapolis called Norway House, and they've also been very supportive in planning this, in putting together and funding this event. A word about the Oslo Center for Peace and Human Rights and the Oslo Center U.S. Foundation.